Sierra and Davis had been together for almost 10 years. Their love story began in college, where they balanced classes and part-time jobs. They met in their final year, both exhausted but determined. Davis admired Sierra's fiery spirit, and she loved his calm nature. They fit together perfectly, like two halves of a whole. After graduation, they stepped into adulthood side by side, getting their first jobs, renting a small apartment, and planning their future. Marriage felt like the next step, and within a year, they exchanged vows, believing their love would last forever. At first, their marriage was full of joy, weekend trips, lazy Sundays, and whispered dreams of growing old together. But as time passed, things changed. The excitement faded into routine. The laughter in their home grew less frequent, replaced by quiet frustrations. Davis, who once surprised Sierra with flowers and sweet notes, now came home tired, barely speaking. Sierra, who once loved their quiet nights, found herself missing the spark they had before. Small arguments became daily fights. The balance between them shifted. Davis became distant, while Sierra grew restless. Then came the night that changed everything. It was an ordinary evening. Sierra came home from work, already irritated by a rough day. Davis was home early, flipping through TV channels with little interest. Their conversations had become predictable, mostly about bills or dinner. She tossed her purse on the table and sighed. "Rough day?" Davis asked, not looking up. "Yeah, but nothing new," she muttered, heading to the kitchen. The air felt heavy, thick with unspoken words. It was only a matter of time before one of them said something that would start another fight. And then it happened. Davis had left his shoes in the middle of the living room, again. Sierra had asked him 100 times not to do that. "For God's sake, Davis, why can't you just put your shoes where they belong?" she snapped. Davis sighed. "It's just shoes, Sierra. Why do you always make a big deal out of nothing?" "It's not nothing. It's about respect," she shot back. "I clean this place, and you don't even care enough to put your shoes away." "Here we go again," Davis muttered, rubbing his temples. Sierra scoffed. "Oh, I'm sorry. Am I bothering you? Is basic decency too much to ask?" Davis finally turned to face her, his jaw tight. "You act like I don't do anything around here. I work just as much as you do, but the second something isn't done your way, you lose your mind." "You don't even try," Sierra snapped. "You sit there, acting like the victim, while I do everything to keep this house together." Davis let out a bitter laugh. "You think you do everything? You're delusional." Sierra's temper flared. "At least I'm not as pathetic as your mother." The words slipped out before she could stop them. Silence filled the room. Davis, she wouldn't just cheat on him. She would destroy him. If he thought he could humiliate her, she would make sure he felt worthless. The next morning, Sierra walked into the office with a different energy. Her back straighter, her eyes sharper. She scanned the room. So many men. Some married, some single, some she barely knew. It didn't matter. They all had a purpose. She started small, brushing past them in the hallway, holding eye contact too long, letting her touch linger when handing over papers. It was a game, and she was setting the pieces into place. The first to take the bait was Joey. Young, ambitious, and always flirting, Joey had tried to charm her before. She had always ignored him, but not today. During lunch, she sat beside him, laughed at his jokes, touched his arm when she spoke. She could see the way his confidence grew, the way he leaned closer. Then she whispered in his ear, "Meet me in the bathroom. 5 minutes." Joey's eyes widened. He hesitated, then nodded. Minutes later, they were pressed together in a cramped stall, breathless, lost in the heat of the moment. Sierra didn't care about the act itself. It was the power she felt, over Joey, over Davis. When it was over, she straightened her clothes, ran a hand through her hair, and walked out as if nothing had happened. But as she returned to her desk, something unexpected happened. She didn't feel satisfied. One man wasn't enough. No, she needed more. Over the next few days, Sierra lost herself completely. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about power, control. It was about proving to herself that she was unstoppable. Joey had been the first, but he wasn't the last. She moved on to another coworker. Then another. Each time, the rush faded too quickly. The hunger always returned. She flirted without shame, whispered things that spread like wildfire. Soon, nearly every man in the office knew Sierra wasn't off limits. One by one, they fell into her trap. There was Mark, the quiet IT guy who had never had a woman like Sierra look at him twice. There was Derek, the cocky salesman who thought he was irresistible, until Sierra reduced him to just another name on her list. Even Richard, the married department head, risked everything for a few stolen moments with her. Each encounter fed her in ways she never imagined. She felt untouchable. At night, she sat across from Davis at the dinner table and smiled as if nothing had changed. He had no idea that hours earlier, one of his colleagues had been whispering in her ear, his hands all over her. Davis noticed the shift. She was happier, more confident. But he assumed things were getting better, that the tension between them was fading. If only he knew. Weeks passed. Sierra's list grew. 30 men. 40. By the time she reached her 50th, she felt invincible. She had become nothing but a vessel for vengeance. And she didn't care. Each encounter was another knife in Davis's back. One he didn't even know was there. But then, something happened. Willie. He was the office troublemaker, a man who thrived on chaos. And Sierra had been reckless. One night, after another secret rendezvous in the storage room, she turned to find him leaning against the doorway, smirking. "Quite the performance," he said, holding up his phone. Her stomach dropped. Willie had recorded her. Panic shot through her veins. She tried to play it off to act unbothered. But she could see it in his eyes. He had her exactly where he wanted her. "Relax," he said. "I'm not gonna say anything yet." Her mouth went dry. That single word, yet, sent a chill down her spine. She had built everything on secrecy, on the fact that Davis would never know. But now everything was at risk, and she had no idea how much worse it was about to get. Davis sat at his desk, staring at his computer screen, unaware that his world was about to be shattered. The office buzzed around him. Phones ringing, printers humming, voices overlapping. But he wasn't paying attention. For weeks, something had felt off. Sierra had changed. She was distant, yet oddly confident. At first, he thought it was just the aftermath of their fight. He regretted slapping her, though he still believed she had pushed him too far. But lately it was different. She barely looked at him. Their conversations had turned into lifeless exchanges. "Good morning. Dinner's ready. Good night." Something was wrong. Then the email arrived. The subject line read, "Hello, stranger." At first, Davis thought it was spam. He almost deleted it, but something about it unsettled him. His finger hovered over the mouse. Then he clicked. Inside was a single sentence. "Leave her immediately. She is pathetic." And below it, an attachment. A video. His pulse pounded in his ears as he clicked the file. The screen went black for a moment. Then the video began. Davis leaned forward. His breath hitched. It was Sierra, in a conference room, with Joey. At first he thought, no, this isn't real. This has to be fake. Then the angle changed. Another clip played. And another. His wife. Different locations. Different men. His co-workers. People he worked with. People he saw every day. His stomach twisted. He felt sick. Then, another clip. Sierra, in the break room, pressed against the counter, whispering into another man's ear. Davis recognized the voice. "Let's make this quick," she said, laughing softly. "My husband will never know." Davis's hands clenched into fists. His entire reality crumbled in an instant. The woman he loved, the woman he trusted, the woman he thought he knew better than anyone else, had betrayed him in the worst way imaginable. And it wasn't just one mistake. The courtroom was packed. The case had gained national attention. The man who had killed his wife after discovering she had slept with 52 men. Public opinion was divided. Some called him a monster, a cold-blooded killer who had no right to take her life. Others saw him as a broken man, driven to the edge by the ultimate betrayal. Davis sat motionless as the prosecution laid out the evidence. The emails, the videos, the confession, the murder weapon. Every detail was laid bare for the world to see. He didn't react, not when Sierra's family sobbed in the front row, devastated by the gruesome reality of her death. Not when his own family looked at him with disbelief and sorrow. Not even when they played the 911 call. It was a swift trial. The defense argued that Davis had acted in a state of extreme emotional distress, that Sierra's betrayal had shattered him beyond repair, that the weight of humiliation and rage had driven him to an unthinkable act. They painted him as a man who had lost everything in a single devastating moment. But the prosecution had the law on their side. They countered that this wasn't a crime of passion. It was premeditated murder. Davis hadn't just snapped. He had purchased the gun. He had waited for Sierra to come home. He had played the videos for her, forced her to confront her actions, then executed her in cold blood. He hadn't fired once in a blind rage. He had shot her over and over again, making sure she was dead. The jury deliberated for just a few hours. When they returned, the courtroom fell silent. Davis stood as the judge read the verdict. Guilty of first-degree murder. A murmur spread through the room. Some gasped. Others nodded as if they had expected nothing less. Davis didn't flinch. He didn't cry. He didn't beg for mercy. The judge handed down the sentence. Life in prison without the possibility of parole. As the bailiffs led him away, he glanced at the gallery one last time. His father looked away. His mother wiped tears from her eyes. Sierra's family sat in silent agony. And in that moment, for the first time since pulling the trigger, Davis felt something. Not regret, not anger, just emptiness. A hollow, endless void. And then, the doors closed behind him. The jury didn't take long. Less than an hour. Guilty. Life in prison. No parole. Davis barely reacted as the judge delivered the sentence. His fate had been decided long before he stepped into that courtroom. The moment he pulled the trigger, his future had been written in blood. But the story didn't end with the trial. It lived on. People dissected every detail. Some saw Davis as a cautionary tale, a man who let rage consume him until there was nothing left. Others saw Sierra as the villain, an unfaithful wife who had pushed him past the breaking point. And then the videos leaked. They spread like wildfire, turning Sierra into an internet legend. Her name became synonymous with betrayal, whispered in forums, dissected in viral videos. She was the woman who had slept with 52 men out of revenge, forever etched into digital history. Davis, on the other hand, disappeared. He faded into a prison cell, his life shrinking to a 6-by-8-foot box, the sound of clanking metal doors, and the whispers of inmates who had all heard his story. Some pitied him, some laughed at him, but Davis no longer cared. He had stopped feeling anything a long time ago. And so, the story of Davis and Sierra ended the same way it began, with love, with betrayal, and with revenge that consumed everything in its path. Because revenge is a fire. It burns hot, feels righteous, even satisfying in the moment. But let it rage too long, and it devours everything in its wake, leaving nothing but ashes. Sierra wanted to hurt Davis. She wanted him to suffer as she had suffered when he struck her. But in her thirst for vengeance, she lost herself. What started as a moment of anger spiraled into something uncontrollable, something beyond reason. She never stopped to ask if hurting him would heal the wound inside her. Davis, too, let his emotions dictate his fate. The betrayal shattered him, twisted his love into hatred, and led him down a path from which there was no return. In that moment, he saw no other way forward, only an ending, and so he became judge, jury, and executioner, sealing both their fates in blood. But in the end, who really won? Sierra was gone. Davis was locked away. 2 lives destroyed. The love they once shared, real, passionate, full of promise, had rotted into something tragic. And for what? A slap, a grudge, a choice made in anger. Their story became a reminder of how quickly things can spiral out of control, how a single moment can alter lives forever. Because no amount of revenge can turn back time. No amount of suffering inflicted on another can erase the pain we carry inside. And no amount of regret can bring back what has already been lost. The story of Davis and Sierra is a tragic tale of love turned to betrayal, of pain that spiraled into vengeance, and of choices that could never be undone. It serves as a stark reminder that emotions, when left unchecked, can lead us down dark and irreversible paths. Revenge, no matter how justified it may feel in the moment, is a fire that consumes not just its target, but the one who wields it as well. A special thank you to our readers. To everyone who took the time to read this story, thank you. Your engagement, curiosity, and reflections make storytelling worthwhile. This piece is purely a work of fiction, meant to entertain, provoke thought, and explore the depths of human emotions. While the events and characters are entirely fictional, the themes of love, betrayal, and the consequences of our choices are things we can all learn from. Remember, stories like this exist within the realm of fiction. They are here to challenge perspectives, ignite discussions, and remind us of the weight of our actions. We hope this journey left you with something to think about and, above all, that you enjoyed the experience. Thank you for being a part of this world. Stay curious, stay thoughtful, and keep exploring the power of storytelling.
Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more